I think that's the approach. Let's go. Let's do this, Stacy. Welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So listen, for you're jumping into season three, the adoption of marketing mindset and the employee experience. And Stacy, you and I connected a few months ago, and at that time, I was just really blown away by the direction you took. I said, "Hey, Stacy, adoption of marketing mindset. What do you think?" And you said, "Well, have you talked about trust on your podcast?" And I took a step back. I said, "Well, it's kind of, yeah, it's implied. It's no, no, no. Really, we haven't, Stacy." And then I looked at your background, which is really, really impressive, from agencies like Digitas to enterprises like Bose, and of course, you are the founder and creative director of Trust Deep. Like literally, trust runs deep in your experience, in your point of view. So I can't wait to discuss it. But like, maybe you can start off by, how did trust get on your radar? How did you end up to where you are now, having a conversation about trust?
Yeah, thank you. That's okay. So I'm a copywriter by trade. I've been in advertising and branding a little bit more than 20 years, closer to 25 years, I guess now. And I worked for a lot of different agencies, a lot of different brands, and this we were always trying to find a way to build customer loyalty. And when social came around, then we wanted to like get likes, and we always want awareness. But I thought like there was a piece missing. And so I would say, well, how do we want to build loyalty? And they're like, well, we make a good product, or we give people good experiences, or we have a loyalty program. I'm like, okay, but what's the thing that makes people genuinely loyal? And they're like, some of those things, right? And we just do those things well, and then we get loyalty. And I said, I bet there's got to be a process. I bet there has to be a way to better understand how loyalty is created in humans, right? So I started thinking about this, did a bunch of research, because I have a sort of a scientific mind, so I want to understand things, whether it's mechanical or human. I want to understand how things work. So when I had the opportunity to start my own agency, I said, this is what I'm going to focus on. The thing that actually builds loyalty. And I came down to trust. Trust is the thing that creates loyalty. That was a whole different direction, and an interesting one that I went down to understand what goes into creating trust. And trust has a lot of benefits, but the conversation is sometimes difficult, as you can imagine. Like, if I were to say to you, if I were to meet you for the first time, Adam, and say, "Hey, trust me," what
Uh-oh.
would your reaction be?
Immediate, all of my alarms are going off. That wasn't even a thing I was thinking about, but now I am. Right now, you brought it front and center. And I know that, Stacey, you actually published in our community this comment, the innovator community. And by the way, those who are listening, amazing, appreciate all of the support and engagement. And you connected trust to humanity. Like, you took it up a level. You didn't just stay at the customer side, and we're going to talk about the employee side, the importance of building an amazing brand, impacting the world. But you think, and I tend to agree, that trust is foundational to the success of our society. Right. So maybe we start at the highest level, probably not too much, because we're going to get super philosophical, and who knows where that could take us, but maybe a few minutes there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So um, that's how society formed, right? So if we go back millions of years and we had um, human-like creatures living, the way they were able to come together and live together was by trading some of their vulnerabilities to have trust with each other. So if I'm going to come together with a number of other people, and live in whether it's a village or a hut or even a cave, I have to trust that these people won't hurt me in my sleep. I have to trust that they won't eat the food that I've gathered. I have to trust that they're going to share food with me if I need it. I'm going to have to trust that they'll care for my offspring if I'm not around to look after my young ones. Trust is how society formed, because we all have needs, functional and emotional needs. We can't accomplish all of those needs ourselves. We need people, other people, to help us, and we have to trust to let them in, to our lives. So yeah, trust is foundational to society then, it's foundational to society now, and it's going to be foundational as we go forward.
And we're living at a time and age where trust is being challenged everywhere. Everywhere. And with more digital, the more we seem connected, perhaps the less we're truly connected at a very foundational level. But let's take us into the direction of, the adoption of a marketing mindset and employee experience. And we're saying let's compare the pursuit of trust between the customer side and the employee side. So maybe you could just kind of let's kick it off, because there's so many directions for us to take that I was having a bit of a hard time to structure. I usually say people, process, technology. That's the approach where we say who does the work, and then the process they follow, technology that enables it. But I think here we just have to even take it up a notch to first just how would you compare the pursuit of trust from the external to the internal audiences, whether you want to talk about the similarities or the differences, but let's begin to contrast that before we go deeper.
Sure. So if we do you mind if I just describe my understanding of trust, just so that the audience
Perfect.
has,
Yeah.
so
Context.
we're all speaking the same language. So the trust is sort of this weird thing, like you said before. If somebody asks you to trust them, immediately
Hmm.
you become distrustful. But I think it's important to have conversations about trust so that we can understand it, and when we understand it, we can start to improve it. Through my work, I've discovered that there are 4 pillars that go into building trust. 2 of them relate to our capability, our ability to do something, and 2 of them relate to our character. So in our work here at our agency, we call this the trust dynamic, and there are 4 pillars to it: credibility, track record, empathy, and alignment of interests. And I can go into what each of those mean, but I don't
I think
want to
that's
take us too
helpful.
far.
It would be
Okay.
helpful to do that. Hmm.
So the first one is credibility. Credibility is your knowledge of a subject matter. So if we were at a cocktail party, me and you, and we started talking, within about 30 seconds or a minute, if we're talking about, let's say you're asking me about something I'm interested in or something that I do for work, under 60 seconds, you can tell whether I know what I'm talking about or if I'm just, making stuff up. So if you ask me a question, I'm like, oh, you're in marketing? What do you think about, the influence of social media on brand reputation? And soon you're going to be able to tell whether I know what I'm talking about or not. That's credibility.
Hmm.
The second pillar is track record. Track record is our ability to prove that we've done something well in the past so that we can sort of predict a future outcome. So things that like tell you your track record. So like your LinkedIn profile is track record. You've graduated from college, that's track record. If you have testimonials from customers, that's track record. So we can take an event of the past and sort of say, we can predict this guy will do what he's saying he can do because he's done it in the past. The second 2 pillars are about your character. The first one is empathy. Empathy is our ability to relate to others, and it's the quickest way to build trust. And there's this really simple way to do it. So people are like, well, empathy is this hard thing to gather, or how do we do it? I'm not empathetic. Listening is the quickest way to build empathy. And you don't even have to agree with somebody. Just validating their concerns or their point of view, you are validating them as a person. They begin to trust you. If you won't listen to somebody, they don't have the opportunity to talk to you or share something. If they can't share that, they don't have the opportunity to become vulnerable to you. Once somebody shows you some vulnerability and you are careful with that vulnerability, you start to build trust. The last one is alignment of interests. So alignment of interests is actually one of the strongest factors in building loyalty because it creates meaning, like brand meaning. So alignment of interest means that you and I have the same end goal, but beyond that, we have the same path that we're willing to take to get to the end goal. So we can both want the same thing, but if you want to do if you want to take plan A and I want to do plan B, we don't have an alignment of interests, even if our end goal is to get to the same point. So those four things are critical in building trust in any relationship, with it, whether it's me and you and a friend, you and a colleague, you and your dry cleaner. I mean, like every relationship has these four pillars in different proportions, depending on the significance or the details involved.
So applying that to external or internal audiences, this dynamic model for trust is the same. Are there similarities when you think about the external, your customers versus your employees?
Yeah, there are a ton of similarities. So the first thing we have to understand, and this seems so obvious, but we have to say it. Your employees are human beings. Your customers are human beings. We all have, like I said, needs, functional and emotional needs. There's that similarity. So you start there, and you can see how that you can build trust in similar ways between the two groups. I mean, marketers put so much effort into understanding and improving customer experience. There are ways to apply some of those tactics or strategies to improving employee experience. The magical thing is, if you start by trying to improve employee experience, customer experience naturally goes up, because your employees make or break like your brand, your customers' interaction with the brand, the product, the people making the product, support, sales channels, etc. If you can improve your employee experience, I guarantee you will see an increase in customer experience.
Yeah, that total agree with you. So Stacy, let me. And by the way, I think most people agree that if you improve your employee experience, your customer experience will follow. I think the challenge is, how do you do it, and then how do you track the extent of the impact to justify the lift, the ROI?
Yeah.
And we'll touch on that. But first, I kind of am curious. So when we think about the customer experience, and we ask the question of who is responsible for loyalty, for things like trust, and you could say anyone who touches the customer journey is responsible, which is you argue depends on the industry, the entire organization. But who is accountable for it? I could argue in most cases it would be the CMO. The
I would
CMO
agree.
would be held responsible for it, right, Stacy?
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. So CMO is responsible, because if there's isn't customer loyalty, and if there's high churn, that's the person who's going to have to answer for it. So I think it starts it's the CMO, but I think bigger picture, it is the C-suite. It's leadership that really needs to understand how to build a trusting organization. But when we want to apply it directly to a customer, the CMO needs to be responsible for that. And so I think we're sort of in an interesting period of time where there are people who see that these two silos of customer experience and employee experience can't live on their own forever. They have to come closer. They have to merge. So the CMO is going to have additional responsibility, I think, in merging those two paths. I don't know if you agree with that.
Oh, you just stepped into a massive and raging debate. This debate has been going on for I think, from my point of view, since we've landed on this idea of adoption of marketing mindset, and we discovered the emerging market, which has been about. It started with David at Spirit Airlines, who said consumerization of the employee experience in December, and since then we've been diving in. And I gotta tell you, I have advocates for all options, almost all options. So yes, there are a few that say the CMO. And the counter argument is, hey, their eyes on the prize, which is the customer. Sure, the impact employee, there is a huge impact. But if you bring them internally, you're creating a mess on your hands and you're taking their eye off the prize. Then there is the CHRO who are saying, okay, yeah, it's time for us to, and I say CHRO, it should be / chief people officer. Depends on the organization and the titles, although there are nuances in those. But they don't have the marketing mindset. And it isn't just saying, hey, get a marketing mindset. It's almost like saying, hey, you don't need an attorney, just get an attorney mindset. No, it is a deep function. There's a reason the CMO has experience in marketing. So then the CHRO or chief people officers are raising the question of building their own teams that are led by a marketer, an experienced marketer. I also have just finished the episode yesterday, COO. We have CEO. We also have advocates for chief experience officer. And I'm going to pause there just because there's so many options, Stacy. But would you say that your case is who will take on the trust with employees as a metric? Because you can easily create a metric. It could be done whether it's a survey or you can look at some indicators like retention. You're saying it should be the CMO, correct?
Oh, well, with employees. So, okay, so you're asking me who should take on responsibility with the employees, and so our choices are CEO, CMO, Chief Experience Officer, and Chief People Officer. Are those our four choices?
I would even throw in a chief operating officer. And it
Chief
also,
Operating
to
Officer.
make things more complicated as if they weren't already, there's probably variability by industry because some industries have an entirely different dynamic. So you can answer with either a title or you can provide some color into, a specific industry.
Okay, so here's what I think, and I'm going to tell you the situation that needs to happen, and then we can probably sort of understand who's going to be controlling that situation. So if we go back to the four pillars of the trust dynamic, um, credibility, track record, empathy, and alignment of interests, we need to see a situation where those four pillars are being brought to life. So if we want to improve trust with our employees, they will need to see that leadership has credibility. Leadership has the ability to do the job that they've been hired to do, not just lead. Let's say there's a CEO who his job is simply management. That person is going to have either the direct knowledge, experience, or skill, or have people closely aligned with them who have the knowledge, experience, or skill to do the actions that the company does. So, for instance, if we take a manufacturing organization, leadership needs to understand how manufacturing happens so that the employees will have trust in that person's vision. So if the leader comes and says, we're going to stop doing things the way we do them now because I have this vision for us to, I don't know, instead of making boxes out of metal, we're going to make them out of cardboard. That's my vision. That person's going to have the operational experience, knowledge, skill to convince the employees that is a wise choice. That person's going to need to have walked in the employee's shoes. Additionally, though, that leader, whether it's CMO, COO, Chief People Officer, or CEO, they're also going to have the the empathy to understand what matters to their employees. Empathy is treated as the soft skill that's like really nice to have if we can have it, but if it's just not possible, well, then we throw up our hands and say, sorry, I couldn't do it. It's absolutely necessary in every instance. And I want to just like share an example with you. Maybe you heard recently that Elon Musk said that working from home is morally wrong. So if we think about him as a leader, anybody who's working for any of his organizations, those employees likely have the same end goal as him, to build innovative products, to be a category leader, to make massive profit. But they're not quite aligned in practice because they might say, as an employee, my job is to help us innovate, help us keep costs down, help us become a market leader. But as a human, I have other needs. I have to take care of my family. I have to take care of myself. I have to, be a good member of my community. Working from home may, whether it's sometimes all the time or some combination, working from home might allow me to help me be a better person while also helping me be a great employee over here. That's my mindset. Elon Musk says working from home is morally wrong. I don't want anyone to do it. So there's this division there of what they want and how they're willing to get there. So I think a leader needs to have those four pillars under control. So we could let's. But your original question was, first of all, do you agree with that,
Yeah.
or what do you think?
No, I follow you. And an Elon Musk is a good example where you could say, okay, it doesn't align to those who prefer to work from home because that makes them better, but it may align to those who have the opposite perspective of saying, hey, when I go to work, I'm able to accomplish a lot more and I get in the zone, or they prefer that environment that's collaborative, that's maybe less digital and more physical, but being very transparent with it and stating what it is is probably key for Elon Musk to figure out who should be the right team for him to lead.
You said that's an interesting point, because this is something I tell our branding clients when they're saying, well, what should we stand for? And it's like, well, you can stand for, I mean, what do you decide what you stand for? And it doesn't have to be universally accepted, right? So
Hmm.
Elon Musk's opinion doesn't have to be universally accepted to be authentic to him. So his point of view is going to, like you're saying, he's going to identify who are the team
Hmm.
members who he believes are going to get the company, whichever company it is, to their destination along the path that he wants. So I guess he's being transparent and authentic in
Hmm.
his beliefs, and then I guess it's up to employees to decide whether they align with that or don't. Um, but
Exactly.
I guess he's
That's
I guess
exactly.
sorry, go ahead.
No, please.
I guess it's like he's being upfront about it. I guess that's something that we can't accuse him of not representing his true vision, because we get that 1,000 tweets a day from him. Yeah. So but he doesn't have to be what, like, my ideal of the perfect boss or leader. He doesn't have to be. But if I choose to be part of that organization, if I want to be loyal to that organization,
Hmm.
I need to be on the same page as him. So, but maybe he has like legions of employees who are like you're saying, who
Hmm.
index high on that idea of working in the office, or like under the parameters that he believes are morally wrong, morally correct.
Yeah, because the whole and it we could we got to be careful because otherwise I think we could go super deep on the work from home because obviously it's got amazing benefits, but it also has amazing drawbacks. And so I'm going to park on that specific topic,
Mm-hmm.
as tempted as I am to fully unpack and dive in. But I want to return then to the person that is responsible for trust. And what's interesting of what you're highlighting is it's a role of a number of leaders. This isn't
Yeah.
just one, and they have individual contributions. But if you were to do a survey of trust, and then you went to one person in the organization and said, you messed up, you didn't live up to the expectations of what we needed you to do, would it be in this case the CEO?
I think so. I think so. I think so, because I think the CEO, sets the stage for how we all want to operate. The same way in a family, like the parents set the rules or the value system that they want the children to understand. And I'm not trying to say that employees are children and leadership are parents, but we look to our our organization's guiding principles, and those have to come to life. They're not just values that we put on the wall or a mission statement. It's our actions. So I would say it comes down to the CEO. And I have a good example, if you want to
Hmm.
dive into a
Yeah.
CEO who lives it. I don't know if you've ever heard of Bob Chapman. Bob Chapman is the CEO of a manufacturing company called Barry Waymiller. He wrote this book called Everybody Matters. And I usually will give this book around the holidays to clients as a gift. It's such a great book. Everybody Matters. So he came into the organization with this belief that people are important. Product has to get made, services have to be performed, but people are the thing that matter most. He has a knack for improving the performance of organizations by focusing on people. So if there's a manufacturing process, and let's say it's pretty good, let's say it's 70% of what it could be, he would ask employees, how could we improve this process? He would even ask underperforming employees, like people who, like, you would probably say to yourself, this isn't the right guy to ask because he comes in late. He's not really good at his job. His performance review is lacking. He asks everybody to understand what the process needs, how it can be improved, because he puts the people first. He said, okay, so from your perspective, whether you're, an hourly worker or a member of management, how do you think this process can be improved? And he understands it from a human perspective. And he has a knack for improving the performance of these of the many divisions of the company that he runs. I mean, like, astronomically, these massive improvements, and employee loyalty is off the charts. Now, there are some people who you probably can't help, right? So they're going to be people in your organization who you ask, hey, how do we improve this process? And they're very negative. They have a tendency to poison an entire group, right? I think we've all seen people like this. But he says even that person, but there's a point where I think he says you would never give up on any employee. You would always try and understand how you can make the situation better for them, because that will help the organization. I don't know. I think I'd have to see that in practice. But Bob Chapman is a good example of a CEO who believes those decisions that affect customer experience start with employee experience, and he's directly involved in building trust with those people so he can build their capability, so he can build their character, so that they can go off and do whatever the company needs to be done. That's the ultimate goal of business, right? So business is not a philanthropic initiative. Its goal generally is not to make society better, although we have tons of purpose-driven organizations out there, right? And we have the choice between this one and that one, and we like this one's purpose, so we buy from these guys. But the main purpose of the organization is to be a good performing financial instrument, right? So that's its job. So, but he sees his way to make his companies better performing financial instruments by improving employee experience.
Make a strong case. You absolutely make a strong case. So in the next few minutes, what I'd love to just scratch the surface on is, okay, it's the CEO. Let's go there. That's the person responsible. When we think about external, how do we accomplish this? Well, we think about communications. We think about messaging. We think about where those messages are, how to make them engaging, how to create the social proof, influencers. I'll stop, but we could go on and on and on. What are the different, whether it's called mechanics, methods, approaches for how to accomplish the elevation of trust? Internally, like when you think about this as a challenge, taking aside the importance of the town halls and the meetings, I'm not saying those are not important, but they're not going to be the be all for sure. Also taking aside the one-on-ones with your leaders, absolutely important, and your face-to-face with your team members. All of these things are important. So, but is that it? Or do we go beyond in terms of marketing internally, the messages that are important? And if we do, how do we think about that? In my view, as you know, Stacy, that is the emerging market.
Yeah, I think there are two things maybe you didn't touch on, but they could. I think that they do have influence. I say this thing, and I don't say it lightly, but I say that if your employees, every single one of your employees, doesn't understand your company's purpose, you don't have a brand. If your employees don't know your values, you don't have a brand. If they don't know your mission, you don't have a brand. It comes down to changing the paradigm or the view that your employees have of their role at the organization. There are a couple of things that happen. So we need people, first of all, we need them to have the right skills, hands-on skills to do the job. We can improve those skills, but we also need to understand what we need to understand if they know what the function of the company is, or what we need the company to do, not just making a product or developing a service. People need to understand what the company stands for. The same way that we build customer experience by going out and we do the foundational work of creating a brand, and we understand what the brand stands for. We understand what the brand stands for by understanding what customers need, right? So I always say brand is the intersection of what like a company does like best, better than anyone else, and what people need, what customers need. That intersection there, that's like the brand that you bring to life. We do all that work for brands to improve the customer experience, to make people loyal. Your employees have to understand the same way as we would communicate, telegraph that out to our customers through all of our channels. Employees have to understand the brand in the same way. And like far too often we see, like I said, like the mission statement is like this poster on a wall that like people walk past and never read or understand. But you and I as employees, we have to understand that it's our mission. It's not just the company's mission. Like we are the company. If all the employees disappear, and of course there are other elements of the company that are important, but if the employees disappear, if we tune out, if we turn off, I mean, it's like the brand doesn't exist. So I think it's incredibly important to shift people's paradigm to say, this is your role here. Your role is not simply to sell insurance or to make shoes or to like, design aircraft. Your mission is whatever our mission statement is. That is your purpose in being here. Change people's role and say, you're a leg of this stool. You guys help prop up what we do and not just improve it, but you help steer it. So like, it's important to, like you said, mention town halls and things like that and one-on-ones. It's important to understand what your employees are all about. They have to align to that. And then there's other question. I hope maybe we have time to get to this. It's like, so what if people don't align to it? Then like, what do you do with them? I mean, that's another thing. Like for like customers, it's easy. Like customers don't align with your brand. It's easy. They stop buying from you. They stop responding to your emails. They unfollow you. I mean, like people can like, as a customer, you can easily distance yourself from a company that doesn't align with your beliefs. Like if their brand doesn't work for you. As an employee, it's a more difficult situation because we need to find those people and, like I said, change their paradigm, get them to understand, get them on the same page. And if you can't get them on the same page, they can do an incredible amount of damage to your brand, not just in their role, like making a shoe or designing aircraft, but poisoning the employees around them, or if they're a client-facing employee, performing poorly with that interaction, because that interaction is incredibly important. So employees need to understand the brand the same way we want our customers to understand the brand. And if it's going out through those channels and doing a brand campaign, we need to do a brand campaign internally. If we're changing a direction and we've got a new logo or something like that, and we want to announce it to people because now this new logo aligns with this other thing we do and we think it's great because whatever, we need to like communicate that same way to our employees, but tell them what their new role is when we make a development, or if we decide to go into a different line of products. And okay, so now we used to make running shoes, now we're going to making hiking shoes too. Well, we have to get them to understand why we're doing it and their role in it. So it's incredibly important to get people aligned with the company's brand the same way we want customers aligned with the company's brand.
I'm tracking with you, Stacy. You're so right. This is where it all begins. Listen, I'm looking at time and I'm like, you know what? We could go on and on for hours. We're just scratching the surface. We should have only scheduled, instead of an hour, maybe 10 hours, maybe 15 hours. But Stacy,
you don't want to hear me talk for 10 hours. Come on.
No, I think it's interesting, but I do want to ask you, for the innovators that are listening in today, who are asking the question, how do we adapt marketing mindset, and of course they're reflecting on, trust trust, and what advice would you give them in order to continue their journeys, in order for them to kind of keep moving forward?
So, when your audience of innovators here, I think what they need to understand at a foundational level is what they stand for. We can't create loyalty with our employees unless we can give them something to believe in. We can't give them something to believe in if we don't know what that thing is. So I think it's critical for innovators, whether it's a startup or an established company, to truly understand what makes them different from other organizations, understand their foundational elements, whether those are values or mission or purpose, and then live those things, bring them to life, but bring them to employees and get employees to understand that those are things that they need to take to heart and live with. You can do that through employee communication. Like you mentioned, you
Mm-hmm.
can do that through employee experiences. You can do that through,
Mm-hmm.
the design of your offices or facilities. You can do that through your compensation. So, I mean, if one of our goals as a company is to help people be the best person they can be, well, we're going to want to try and develop them or help them develop themselves. That means giving them the tools. It might mean giving them PTO to do some sort of character building exercise. It might be to bring them instruction. It might be to inspire them through our own through our own actions. There are a lot of ways you can help help build or turn your organization into one that's a trust rich organization, or as we like to say, trust deep organization. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so
Mm-hmm.
am I answering your question, or is there something specific? Ask me specifically,
Yeah.
and I can.
No, Stacey, I think you gave a number of options for innovators to unpack, to think about how do they further trust. I like the trust deep organizations as the concept. I just want to say a huge thank you, Stacey. You are obviously super passionate about the topic and knowledgeable on the topic of trust, and this was beneficial. And for all you innovators, this episode is available in our community. Stacey is one of the members of the community, so ask away. Just from my personal interaction with Stacey, he's open, very much open to both feedback, but also ask questions that are more technical. How do you accomplish this? And Stacey will engage. So just want to
Yeah,
say a huge thank you for your time and for your brilliance, Stacey.
Adam, I appreciate the time being here, and I do want to say that the community that you're creating, I happen to index very highly on the topics that your experts and community members talk about. So I've found it a great resource to share the things that I'm passionate about, but also to actually learn more about the things that I'm passionate about to help build up the ideas that I have, or take me in different directions, or ask questions that I hadn't considered.
Together, I think what we can accomplish in this emerging market collectively is going to be far more than what we could do individually. Stacey, thank you very much and looking forward to our next interactions.
Excellent. Take care. Thank
Over
you.
and out.